Everything about the game has changed, except for the most important thing.
Here's the truth about Gatorade that most people don't know. It was never supposed to be a commercial product. It started as a desperate attempt to save a failing football team at the University of Florida. The researchers who created it had no business experience, no marketing budget, and no plans to sell it. And yet, fast forward to present day. And Gatorade generates over $7 billion in revenue annually for PepsiCo, making it one of the most valuable beverage brands in the world. You see, Gatorade didn't just create a drink. They created an entire industry. Sports drinks, electrolyte beverages, performance hydration. Before Gatorade, none of this existed. Now, every athlete from middle school to the pros guzzles some version of what 4 Florida researchers accidentally discovered in a university lab in 1965. But here's where it gets really interesting. The University of Florida still gets paid every single year from Gatorade sales. We're talking about $20 million annually in royalties, making it one of the most profitable university inventions in history. Not bad for something that was literally created from leftover lab equipment and kitchen ingredients. So, how did a simple chemistry experiment turn into a global empire? How did 4 academics accidentally create a billion-dollar industry? And why does the University of Florida make more money from Gatorade than most companies make from their entire business? Welcome to the incredible story of Gatorade. But before we dive into this wild story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because this is the kind of shocking corporate history they definitely don't teach in business school. The story begins in 1965 with a man named Dr. Robert Cade, a 37-year-old kidney specialist at the University of Florida. But Robert wasn't trying to invent a sports drink. He was trying to solve a medical mystery that was destroying the Florida Gators football team. The Florida Gators were terrible. I mean, really terrible. They were losing games they should have won, and the coaches were baffled. Players were collapsing from heat exhaustion during practice. They were cramping up in the middle of games. Some were actually being hospitalized from dehydration. The head coach, Ray Graves, was desperate. The team practiced in the brutal Florida heat and humidity, temperatures that regularly hit 95 degrees with 90% humidity. But other teams seemed to handle the heat better. Why were the Gators suffering so much? That's when Coach Graves approached Dr. Cade with a simple question. "Doctor, why don't our players sweat during the second half of games?" It was an innocent question, but it would change everything. Dr. Cade was intrigued. As a kidney specialist, he understood how the human body processed fluids. So he assembled a team of researchers, Dr. Dana Shires, Dr. Alejandro de Quesada, and Dr. Jim Free. Together, they decided to figure out exactly what was happening to the players' bodies during these intense practices. What they discovered was shocking. The players were losing massive amounts of electrolytes through their sweat, sodium, potassium, chloride. But they were only drinking water to replace it. It was like trying to refill a car's gas tank with just air. The players' bodies were essentially shutting down from electrolyte imbalance. But here's the thing. Dr. Cade had no idea how to make a sports drink. None of them did. They were kidney doctors, not beverage chemists. So they did what any desperate researchers would do. They started experimenting in their lab with whatever they could find. The first version of what would become Gatorade was created in Dr. Cade's laboratory using the most basic ingredients imaginable. They mixed water with sodium chloride, potassium phosphate, and sugar. That's it. No fancy equipment, no corporate research team. Just 4 doctors with some salt, sugar, and a theory. The problem was, it tasted absolutely terrible. Dr. Cade's wife, Mary, was the first person to try it, and she immediately spat it out. "It tastes like toilet bowl cleaner," she said. so they added lemon juice to make it somewhat drinkable. But Dr. Cade was confident in the science. The human body loses specific electrolytes during exercise, and their mixture was designed to replace exactly those electrolytes in the right proportions. If it worked, it would be revolutionary. If it didn't, well, they just wasted a lot of time and some perfectly good lab equipment. The first test came during a practice scrimmage in October 1965. Dr. Cade gave half the team his experimental drink, and half the team just got water. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. The players who drank Cade's mixture were still going strong in the fourth quarter, while the players who only had water were exhausted and cramping up. It was like they were playing a completely different sport. Coach Graves was amazed. For the first time in years, his players weren't collapsing from heat exhaustion. They weren't cramping up. They were actually finishing games strong. The results were immediate and dramatic. The following season, the Gators posted a stellar 8-2 record, and the university released an official statement about the drink. A Florida newspaper headline summed up the gist. One lil swig of that kickapoo juice and biff bam sock. It's Gators 8-2. But it wasn't just the win-loss record that changed. The entire culture around the team transformed. Players were no longer afraid of practicing in the heat. They actually looked forward to those grueling afternoon sessions because they knew they had a secret weapon. Other teams started noticing. How were the Florida Gators suddenly so much better in the heat? What had changed? Rumors started spreading about some kind of magic drink the Gators were using. Dr. Cade realized he had stumbled onto something much bigger than just helping one football team. He had potentially created a solution for anyone who exercised in hot conditions. Not just football players, but athletes of all kinds. So in 1965, he officially named the drink Gatorade after the Florida Gators, the team that had inspired its creation. It was a simple name, but it captured exactly what the product was about. A drink made for the Gators, by the people who cared about the Gators. Here's where the story gets really interesting. Dr. Cade and his team had no idea how to turn their lab experiment into a business. They were doctors, not entrepreneurs. They didn't know anything about manufacturing, marketing, or distribution. But word was spreading fast. The deals started out small. A high school team wanted a batch of Gatorade, as did boxer Jerry Quarry and the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. Dr. Cade was literally mixing batches of Gatorade in his garage and selling them to whoever asked. He wasn't thinking about building a company. He was just trying to help athletes stay hydrated. But then something happened that changed everything. In 1967, a businessman named Stokely Van Camp approached Dr. Cade with an offer to license the Gatorade formula and distribute it nationally. Dr. Cade was torn. On one hand, he wanted to help as many athletes as possible. On the other hand, he was a doctor, not a businessman. He had no idea if Gatorade would work as a commercial product. But Stokely Van Camp was persistent. They offered Dr. Cade and his team a licensing deal that would pay them royalties on every bottle sold. It seemed like a win-win. Stokely Van Camp would handle the business side, and Dr. Cade could focus on the science. In 1969, Dr. Cade signed the deal, and Gatorade went national. But success brought problems. The University of Florida suddenly realized that 4 of their employees had created what was potentially a very valuable product using university resources. In university labs, on university time. The university filed a lawsuit, claiming they owned the rights to Gatorade. Dr. Cade argued that he had created Gatorade on his own time, with his own resources, and that the university had no claim to it. The legal battle dragged on for years. However, Gatorade presented a unique scenario as it emerged from publicly funded research at a public institution. This raised complex legal disputes, with both the federal government and the University of Florida claiming ownership rights. Eventually, They reached a settlement. Dr. Cade and his team would keep a portion of the royalties, but the University of Florida would get a significant share as well. It was a compromise that nobody was completely happy with, but it allowed Gatorade to move forward, and move forward it did. By the 1970s, Gatorade was being used by professional sports teams across the country. The NFL, NBA, and MLB were all using Gatorade to keep their players hydrated. It was becoming synonymous with professional sports. But Gatorade's real breakthrough came in the 1980s when they started focusing on marketing and branding in ways that no one had ever done for a sports drink before. They started sponsoring individual athletes, not just teams. They created the famous Be Like Mike campaign with Michael Jordan, which became one of the most iconic sports marketing campaigns in history. But the real genius was in how they positioned Gatorade. It wasn't just a drink, it was a performance enhancer. It wasn't just for professional athletes. It was for anyone who wanted to perform like a professional athlete. They created the famous Gatorade shower tradition, where winning coaches get doused with Gatorade after big victories. This wasn't an accident. It was a brilliant marketing strategy that associated Gatorade with winning and celebration. By the 1990s, Gatorade had become more than a product. It was a cultural phenomenon. Kids were drinking Gatorade before Little League games. Weekend warriors were buying it for their morning runs. It had transcended sports and become part of American culture. Gatorade's success didn't go unnoticed by the big beverage companies. In 1983, Quaker Oats bought Stokely Van Camp, which meant they now owned the Gatorade brand. Under Quaker Oats, Gatorade continued to grow. They expanded internationally, introduced new flavors, and continued to dominate the sports drink market. By the late 1990s, Gatorade was generating billions in revenue. But then came the deal that would change everything. In 2001, the multinational food and beverage company PepsiCo acquired Gatorade's parent company, the Quaker Oats Company, for $13 billion to add Gatorade to its portfolio of brands. The acquisition was seen as expensive at the time, with Pepsi paying 29 times earnings for Quaker Oats compared to an industry average of 27.5 times for 14 recent food and beverage sector buyouts. Many analysts thought PepsiCo had overpaid. $13 billion for a company that was essentially built around one product seemed crazy, but PepsiCo saw something others didn't. Gatorade wasn't just a sports drink, it was a platform for an entire category of performance beverages. Under PepsiCo's ownership, Gatorade exploded into a full ecosystem of products. They introduced Gatorade Zero for calorie-conscious consumers, Gatorade Protein for post-workout recovery, Gatorade Energy for pre-workout fuel, Propel for everyday hydration. The drink is owned and manufactured by PepsiCo and is distributed in over 80 countries. What started as a simple experiment in a Florida lab is now a global empire. But here's the really amazing part. By 2015, however, royalties for the group that invented Gatorade had eclipsed $1 billion. Dr. Cade and his team, along with the University of Florida, had collectively earned over $1 billion from their accidental invention. Today, the University of Florida gets a $20M cut of Gatorade profits every year, making it one of the most successful university licensing deals in history. Of course, Gatorade's success attracted competitors. Coca-Cola launched Powerade in 1988, trying to grab a piece of the sports drink market. Body Armor, backed by Kobe Bryant, positioned itself as a premium alternative. Coconut water brands like Vita Coco claimed to be more natural. But none of them could touch Gatorade's market dominance. Even today, Gatorade controls about 75% of the sports drink market in the United States. It's not even close. The secret to Gatorade's continued success isn't just the original formula. It's the brand they've built around performance and athletic achievement. When you think of sports drinks, you think of Gatorade. When you think of hydration, you think of Gatorade. When you think of what professional athletes drink, you think of Gatorade. But Gatorade's story isn't without controversy. As the brand grew more commercial, Dr. Cade became increasingly frustrated with how his invention was being marketed and used. The embittered Dr. Cade cried foul, publicly accusing Gatorade's owner of surreptitiously suppressing his new formulation to eliminate competition. Dr. Cade had developed an improved version called TQ2, but Gatorade's corporate owners showed no interest in it. Dr. Cade felt that Gatorade had become too focused on profits and marketing, and not enough on the science that had made it successful in the first place. He worried that the drink was being marketed to people who didn't really need it. Kids playing recreational sports, casual exercisers who weren't losing significant electrolytes. There were also growing concerns about the sugar content in Gatorade. Critics argue that for most people, drinking Gatorade was actually less healthy than just drinking water, since they weren't exercising intensely enough to need the extra calories and electrolytes. But these concerns didn't slow down Gatorade's growth. If anything, they pushed the company to innovate more, creating low-calorie and zero-calorie versions to address health-conscious consumers. Dr. Robert Cade died in 2007, but his legacy lives on every time an athlete takes a sip of Gatorade. What started as a simple question from a football coach had become a multi-billion-dollar industry. The impact goes far beyond just Gatorade itself. Dr. Cade's research into electrolyte replacement has applications in medical settings, helping treat dehydration in hospitals around the world. The sports drink industry he accidentally created now generates tens of billions of dollars annually across multiple brands and companies. But perhaps most remarkably, the University of Florida continues to benefit from Dr. Cade's invention more than 50 years later. Those annual royalty payments have funded countless research projects, scholarships, and academic programs. A single moment of curiosity in a university lab has generated hundreds of millions of dollars for higher education. Today, Gatorade generates over $7 billion in annual revenue for PepsiCo, making it one of the most valuable beverage brands in the world. Not bad for something that was never supposed to be a commercial product. The company that started with 4 doctors mixing salt water in a lab now employs thousands of people, sponsors major athletes and sports leagues, and has created an entire category of performance beverages that didn't exist before 1965. But here's the really incredible part. If you go to a Florida Gators football game today, you'll still see players drinking Gatorade on the sidelines. The same drink that was created specifically for that team nearly 60 years ago is still helping them win games. And every time someone dumps a cooler of Gatorade over a winning coach's head, they're participating in a tradition that connects back to that original moment when Dr. Robert Cade decided to help a struggling football team in the Florida Heat. Sometimes the biggest innovations come from the simplest questions. In this case, why don't our players sweat? Became a question worth billions of dollars. The Florida Gators may have gone on to win championships, but Dr. Cade and his team won something even bigger. They created an empire that will last forever. That's the power of curiosity, combined with a little bit of salt water and a lot of determination. If you love this wild ride through sports drink history, hit that subscribe button now, because we've got more unbelievable business stories coming your way every week. I'll see you in the next one.